before we kind of dive into my talk, I want us to just take a moment to notice in yourself and to tune in to listen to and to notice how your nervous system feels right now. And to really kind of take measurement of it. I've been looking at my nervous system lately as a spiritual barometer for like how is my inner world, right? So on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being really dysregulated and a hot mess inside, 1 being peaceful, calm, and serene, just silently to yourself, give yourself a number. And notice where you're at. Because, things of the world outside of us can really kind of throw us off center and raise that number up, can't it? And I want us today to look at how to find our spiritual stance in a way that we can notch that number down a bit for ourselves, right? To really help us use that to guide us into deeper spiritual practice. And I've been using it sort of as my bell of mindfulness, if you will. Like if I see my nervous system going up and getting dysregulated, taking a breath, returning to spirit, and coming back to my spiritual stance, if you will. So we're going to explore our spiritual stance. So how do we stay centered when life gets us a little off balance? How do we do that? Finding our spiritual stance not only helps us regulate our physical being, but it helps us really find a place in our life where we can stand on holy ground, where we can stand in the essence of our being, that God essence, our divine thoughts, and come from that place to respond to whatever we're dealing with in our life and in our society and in our culture. I was thinking about this over the last week after celebrating Martin Luther King Jr. Day. I was thinking about the stands that he took throughout his life and realizing in the reflection that there's a difference between what we stand for and the stances we take. There's a difference between what we stand for and the stance we take. Merriam-Webster's defines stance as the way one stands. The stance is the way one stands, or the attitude taken in a given situation. That's our stance. So what kind of stance do we want to live our lives from this year? What kind of stance will really create the extraordinary for us? And what is our stance right now? Just checking in on what our stance is that we're holding right now inside, and do we need to kind of make a shift in order to really step into that stance that we want to hold spiritually inside of us this year? So many of us have gone through lots of challenging and even horrific situations in our lives and overcome them, and there's a point of choice that we talk a lot about in Unity, of choosing our stance, choosing our thoughts around that experience. We can choose to stand in anger and resentment and fear and all of that, or we can choose to really use each and every experience for our growth, for our spiritual evolution, for our awakening, if you will, and come from that place. And I was thinking that's really an age-old choice through the ages, right? I was actually reflecting. I'm going to share with you a passage from Exodus, because the Bible is full of stories of that process that we go through. And and in Unity, we look at the Bible metaphysically. So we look at it as a story of our evolving consciousness, if you will. And so every story represents a state of consciousness that we go through and or are going through on our spiritual journey. So I want to dive into a bit of the Exodus story this morning and explore what that means for us right here and right now. And if you probably remember in the Exodus story, Moses leads the Israelites out of Egyptian slavery. And so in this particular part of the story, Moses has led them into the wilderness. And the Israelites are looking back, and they've got the Pharaoh king has sent his army after them. And they're on their heels. And in front of them is a vast sea. Ever been relate to being between a rock and a hard place, or or a threatening army to sea? You know, that's that place in our consciousness, right? Like a place that feels hopeless. It feels like there's nowhere to go, you know, and no win. And yet Moses, he stands, and what does he do? He takes a stance and he parts the sea and leads them to safety, leads them forward on solid ground. And the Egyptians are kind of swept away, if you will. But I want to just highlight what happens, right, for the Israelites, because this is our mind, right? So in Exodus 14, verses 10 through 14, as the Pharaoh drew near, the Israelites looked back, and there were Egyptians advancing on them. In great fear, the Israelites cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you have taken us away to die in the wilderness? What have you done to us, bringing us out here of Egypt? Is it not the very thing we told you in Egypt? You know, the classic I told you so, right? Is it not the very thing we told you in Egypt? Let us alone and let us serve the Egyptians. For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness. But Moses said to the people, do not be afraid. Stand firm and see the deliverance of the Lord, that the Lord will accomplish for you today. For the Egyptians whom you see today, you shall never see again. The Lord will fight for you, and you have only to keep still. So what does that mean for us in our consciousness? You know, Moses is that understanding of spiritual principle. It's our understanding of truth, of spirit in this moment. And the Israelites are all those thoughts in us that really want to follow those higher thoughts of truth, that really want to follow spiritual principle, but they get caught up in the fear and all this that's out here. And they get, you know, they murmur in the wilderness a lot. That's their pattern, right? And we often do that. We can all get caught up in the fear of what's going on out in front of us. And the wilderness is really that place of kind of the multitude of undisciplined thoughts and uncultivated thoughts. You know, that place in our brains where it's just spinning, ruminating on all the fear, doubt, and worry. Those undisciplined thoughts is our inner wilderness, if you will. And the Egyptians, that's pure ego. That's an ego thoughts that want to just enslave us to those fears and doubts and worries and keep us paralyzed, if you will, or, you know, imprisoned, if you will. And that's always kind of at our heels, right? And the fight, you know, God fighting for us, if you will, in that passage. It's important for us to remember what this passage is saying is that truth, thoughts of truth, those higher thoughts of truth, always overcome a lesser one. Those higher thoughts of truth always overcome the lesser. So what part of our thinking right now are we letting kind of form our spiritual stance? Really examining what it is that we're basing. Are we letting the unruly Egyptian thoughts kind of take over? Or are we coming from that place of our spiritual center, our spiritual stance, standing in truth, claiming those thoughts that help us part the sea of all the chaos in our minds and all the worry, claiming those thoughts of truth so that we can walk forward on solid ground of our being, the holy ground of our being. So the Israelites' experience is kind of our experience, right, in our minds, on our journey of dealing with life, all the challenges that whatever the ups and downs are for us, whether it's social unrest, whether it's health, whether it's money problems, whether it's other relationship challenges, all the things that we face in life can kind of can stir up those Egyptian thoughts and kind of tempt us to look back in fear at them. So how do we find our spiritual stance in the midst of it all, in the midst of everything going on for us? We find I'm going to offer us a process, a spiritual process this week. 3 S's to make it really easy for you all to remember it, okay? The first one is stance. The second is stewardship. And the third is strength. We're going to practice stance, stewardship, and strength. So let's talk about those. Finding our spiritual stance. Really, finding our spiritual stance requires us to come from a place of curiosity and willingness to meet and greet any moment. Any moment. I can think of that old unity affirmation. This too is good, this too is God, this too is for me, and I demand to see the blessing in it. Using any moment for our growth, finding that spiritual stance with willingness and curiosity. So I'm going to share with you a tool that I was introduced, 20 years ago, and it's part of I want to share with you a question that's part of a tool that I've actually used pretty much every day for maybe 16 years. And it's a beautiful question that really calls us into our spiritual stance. And I was introduced to it. It's a question that was given by Maria Nemeth, Dr. Maria Nemeth. And the question is this. You ready? Who am I willing to be in order to produce an extraordinary result out of this interaction? Who am I willing to be in order to produce an extraordinary result out of this interaction? And I love that question because it calls forth, it empowers us to answer the qualities that we're willing to bring in that moment. This interaction could be anything. It could be any moment. Who am I willing to be in order to produce an extraordinary result out of this interaction? And some days, I'm willing to be truthful, courageous, vulnerable, to boldly speak my truth, right? And other moments, I'm willing to be gentle, kind, loving in order to nurture a situation. Each moment calls for different qualities, doesn't it? Each moment calls for us to consciously, intentionally choose those qualities, choose our spiritual stance to come from. So then, we practice stewardship of that stance, right? Because in a heartbeat, life out here can kind of throw us off our stance a little bit. So we practice stewardship of that and really being mindful of our thoughts through the ups and downs, the trials and tribulations that I spoke to a few minutes ago. But as stewards, there are 3 things for us to be aware of this week. Anytime actually, but I've got another letter for you. 3 P's, right? Okay, so you can remember these 2, the things to watch out for. These are 3 P's that block our resilience. Okay, the first one is permanence. Whenever we look at a situation as being this will be forever, and we think it's permanent, we think what's going on in our lives is forever, we are blocking the spiritual flow. We're blocking our spiritual resilience when we think something is permanent. Second P is personalization. If we go to blaming ourselves, blaming another person, or a sense of failure, then we're personalizing it in such a way that we're not stepping forward to our growth. We're not stepping forward to allow the experience to kind of wash through us and awaken and expand our consciousness. We're not allowing ourselves to grow when we personalize it. And the third thing is pervasiveness. When we think it's all pervasive, a situation or circumstance in our life is all pervasive and it affects everything, then we're blocking our flow of God, flow of spirit through us. Because we lose that glimmer of gratitude when we think it's all pervasive, don't we? We miss those beautiful things in our life that are true and rich and beautiful and meaningful for us, even though there's other stuff going on for us as well. It's not all pervasive. So watch out for those 3 Ps, because they can knock us off our spiritual stance in just a flash, if you will. So it's being mindful of those. And if we do find we're not in our spiritual stance, we reorient to finding that spiritual stance again, really coming back to center. Okay, last S to practice this week is strength. Activating that power of strength within us. And strength, really, we define in unity as the energy of God. It is that it's physical, it's mental, it's spiritual, and it is that power within us that when we activate it, we can have that. We can stand in that spiritual stance, if you will. I was thinking of the Winter Olympics coming up. So excited to watch those. I love watching the Olympics, and the devotion and dedication that those athletes train for, and that they, commit themselves to be so masterful in their sports. And I was thinking about that spiritually for us, really checking in our devotion and dedication to spiritually train for all the tough moments in our lives. And we can do that by stilling ourselves towards strength. Stilling ourselves towards strength and really calling on that strength of spirit within to practice, to train for those moments. If I have a challenging situation in my life, stilling myself towards strength, calling on spirit to guide me to the spiritual resourcefulness I need to respond differently than I've done before in that situation. Training in my mind, directing my thoughts in my spiritual resources in a new way by really training, doing that inner training. Charles Fillmore, in the Revealing Word, talks about, he defines stand. And in order to really expand our strength, we have to learn how to stand in that spiritual place. And he said a stand is to hold fearlessly to the truth that spirit is doing its perfect work and that there is no cause for alarm. When I read that, I'm like, But I don't think that's toxic positivity. I think I want to interpret that a little bit for us, because I think what he's saying there is to stand spiritually is to not be operating from spirit, the strength of spirit, not to be operating from a 10 on our nervous system, caught up in the ego mindset, in our human mindset. He's saying, stand in that spiritual nature and come from that place. So how do we activate that strength and stand in spirit? We go into the stillness. Strength, or believe it or not, strength is actually found in the silence. It's found in the stillness. And strength actually has 4 different components to it. It has patience, it has tolerance, it has steadfastness, and it has balance. All of those are aspects of our spiritual capacity of strength and our quality of strength. William Warch says, you find your strength in the stillness and silence of your being. This is how you find your confidence and security, by being still. Stilling yourself toward divine strength results in a habit of calm behavior, dissolving any power anyone may hold over you. Let me say that again. Divine strength results in a habit of calm behavior. I love that. Can't we all cultivate a habit of calm behavior this week? And dissolving any power that anyone may have over us. So it's really stilling ourselves towards strength helps us go to that inner, let spirit be our interpersonal trainer, if you will, to train ourselves, our thoughts, to really bring forth those God thoughts from a more spiritually resourceful place, and from our spiritual center. I was thinking of a friend of mine who I used to work with in the Human Potential Movement. He was an Aikido master, and I haven't practiced Aikido, but from our conversations, what he talks about is that in Aikido they use the practice of letting the attacker kind of flow by and slide by. And I thought, what a beautiful metaphor. And to allow that energy, that movement, they actually kind of use the energy and momentum of the attacker against them, you know. And I thought, what a beautiful metaphor of letting those things that throw us off our spiritual center slide by. And in order to do that, they say it takes a high amount of, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Fudoshin, I guess, a high amount of Fudoshin, and which means a mind that cannot be disturbed, a mind that cannot be disturbed. So anyway, it's a demonstration that internal peace cannot be disrupted by external aggression. Internal peace is ours to hold and keep, and ours to embody. So the founder of Aikido really was centered in love and compassion. The whole practice is centered in love and compassion, and he believed that it's not about destroying the enemy, but about preserving life and protecting all things. Preserving life and protecting all things. And it takes inner strength to do that, doesn't it? To come from that place and to let things slide by and to meet them from our place of spiritual strength. The Fillmores practiced this a lot. They had an affirmation that I believe is on one of the buildings at Unity Village. And this is old languaging, guys, so we have to kind of reframe it in our mind. But I love that it's nevertheless still powerful. And the affirmation is, "Naught can disturb me, for Christ is my peace and my voice." So nothing can disturb me, for that divine within is our peace and our voice. Whatever the affirmative prayer is for you that helps you recenter in strength, use that this week. Use that. I have a favorite that is, "I am safe and secure and surrounded by love." That kind of brings me back to center. I'm safe and secure and surrounded by love. So let's go out this week and really practice finding our spiritual stance and really practicing stewardship, if you will, around that, and strength, and letting those 3 P's slide by as we stand in our spiritual wholeness and holiness. And so it is. Let's take a moment to transition into meditation. And I brought my crystal singing bowl to lead us in today. So I just invite you to get comfortable in your chairs, to take a nice deep breath in, breathing into that spiritual center, that inner sanctuary. Breathing out, softening, releasing. Letting go of the mind chatter and the Egyptian thoughts. Breathing in again. Feeling that power and presence of the divine radiating through us. And releasing, letting go as we breathe out. And in that inner sanctuary, we still ourselves towards strength, the strength of spirit. We open ourselves, receptive, willing to hear the sweet whisperings and guidance of spirit, calling us forth to stand in that spiritual space and to respond in love in our world. deeper into that inner sanctuary to rest in the stillness, to hear that divine guidance, calling forth our highest and best self as we rest in the silence. As we prepare to bring our attention back into this space and sanctuary, let us just take a moment to feel the love and gratitude for all the ways Spirit is guiding us to be love in action in the world, to be our highest divine self. We give thanks for that wisdom, the love, the light that shines through us each and every day and that we share with each other. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. Thank you, God. And so it is.